Hello everyone, this is Lori from Grammy's Keepsakes, and first I want to say thank you so much for all of your kind comments and all of your support. I really appreciate it. You're so kind. I've been asked by a couple people for a tutorial or process video of how I made these little books. And 15 of them have sold already. That is just amazing. Thank you so much. I just can't believe it. But anyway, back to business. I'm going to show you how I made these. And this is the little field note size. And I've got the elastic closure that I made with the ribbon crimp. And they have the file folder inside. So I'll put this aside, and what I'm going to start with is a hanging file folder. You can use any kind of file folder you have. I just have a large supply of these, and they're legal size, so it's kind of nice. But the first thing I did was I cut it as far as I could before the metal. I cut that off. And then I also cut it down here, down through the seam. So I have my file as wide as I can get it. And then I measured down 6 inches and cut, and then I happened to be able to get 2 out of this, so I measured another 6 inches and cut. So I can get 4 out of one hanging file folder. And then I still have 2 sizes of scraps this large to do something else with. So I'm going to put that aside. And it's falling down. It's like Jenga around here. Okay, so that leaves me with these. So then I was looking for some scraps of upholstery fabric, and this is quite thick. A lot of the ones that I did make are this thick. It isn't a sample, but it is something that I got from the Salvation Army. It was a placemat. And this is going to be big enough to do a couple of them. And it's pretty. I like it. And it's going to fit. But the first thing I need to do is to find out where my half is on here. So I just fold it in half, and then I pull out my scoreboard so that I can get a nice even, and that comes in at 4 3/8 for me. So I'm going to go ahead and crease that, and the other one as well. And Dale, you asked how I get so many done at one time. Assembly line. It's all assembly lines. So you want to cut all your file folders, and then I crease them all. I do the same thing to as many as I want to make. And then I go ahead and fold that and burnish it down. And I always fold it the mountain side, and I make it into the valley, and then go ahead and fold it the other way, because I want the dark side to be what shows in the middle. And I just burnish it down. I'm going to flip this over, and now I'm going to take some 3-in-1 glue, Fabri-Tac, whatever you're comfortable using. And I'm not going to go to the edges, but I'm going to glue pretty good. Kind of be generous. And I'm not going to the edge because I'm going to zigzag around it, and it won't be completely dry today before I'm going to sew it. So that's why I'm not going to the edge. And just kind of press that down. It looks like I have to move it just a little bit here. I want to make sure that it's going to fit. And then now I'm going to trim all the way around it. And if I cut the two apart first, that makes it easier to trim it out. And you don't have to cut it up next to it. You can leave a little bit. But just make sure you use nice, sharp scissors. Okay, and then I'll just go ahead and do this quickly. And you can use any kind of fabric that you want to. I know for some, I used linen napkins, and then I used different weights of decorator fabric for the others. Some heavy upholstery like this, some of it was plush, and some of it was like drapery weight. So now here I have my two covers. So I'm going to kind of let these dry a little bit while we do the next little gluing spot. And I've got some images printed out, and this is a piece of heavy canvas, and I just ripped it and frayed it a little bit. So now I need to know how wide to rip it again. And I just make a little cut and then rip. And then it's going to be on the straight grain and easy to fray. And I have another one here. It's another iris, and this says faith, valor, and wisdom. And Dale, I'm making this one for you. It's going to be number 31 in my shop. Dale was kind of disappointed that it had sold before she could purchase that one, so as luck would have it, we're going to have another one. So let's go ahead and snip this and give it a rip. And then we have our two pieces, so we don't need this anymore. So I'm going to put it aside. And it's a little wrinkly, but that's okay, because we're going to glue it and stitch it. And I've already inked the edge of my little cutout with walnut stain is what I used. I inked softly though, gently. I did not want it to be grungy. But you can ink it to your liking or not ink it at all too. That looks fine too. I just don't particularly want the white edge from the cut paper. And I printed this with my laser printer on 32-pound premium paper. So it takes a photo really nice. So now what I want to do is apply glue stick to these. And I'm using a glue stick to hold it instead of my 3-in-1 because I don't want any bumps showing up on that laser printer photo. I want it to be nice and smooth because I'm going to sew it. I'm going to use a zigzag stitch all the way around, but this glue stick will act as my base so that it will stay in place. I got to pick it up to make sure I'm centered. I'm kind of fussy about this part. And then we've got one more. Get it good and gluey. I want it to stick. Okay, so now we're ready to do some sewing. Get some of my tools out of the way and let me bring it up. Get me all set up here. And I do have black thread in it. So let's go ahead and do the zigzag on the actual cover. And what I'm doing is actually going with one stitch the needle is going over the edge to grab that far side. And I am going to back stitch when I come to the end. I don't want my cover falling apart. Okay, and then now is when I can determine if I need to do any trimming of any of my frayed edges. But be careful so that you don't get your zigzag. You don't want to cut that. But any hanging threads, fibers, I do like to have those off. I don't want them to get caught. And then here I have my fold. I'm going to go ahead and fold that. And I'm grabbing a little clip and just holding it on. And then let's just quickly zigzag around the other one. Okay. And I'll trim off those little edges later. But I'm going to go ahead and put the clip there so that it can dry in that position. Now we need to zigzag around our little cover decorations. And I've got to change my thread quick. I don't want black on that. Okay. And what I'm going to do with this is double check to make sure I've got it frayed to where I want it to be. Because it's harder to pull the fibers out after it's stitched. And one more, I think. Good. Okay, I'm going to start on the bottom. It's less detracting, I find. So as you can see here, I just put one edge of the stitch off the paper so that it grabs. And then here I have, like, it looks like a little loose piece, so I just want to pull that out of there. And then these are so fuzzy from my ripping that I like to go through and just give them a little bit of a haircut. Just make sure you use really sharp scissors with this. Okay, and then I'll stitch around this one later. So let me grab this out of the way. And we got to grab the buttons. And these are the kind of buttons that I use. I get them from Hobby Lobby. They're little tiny 3/8 inch buttons. And I'm going to use these little purple ones with this little lady. And I'm going to use a different color with this one, but I don't sew the buttons on until after you've done your zigzag, because that won't work. And then you need, I use my ruler and a pen, and I get them lined up to where I want them. And okay, I want the first one to be at 3/8, and then I want the next one to be at, well, it's going to be here. I'm eyeballing my center. I want my first one to be at 3/8, my third one to be at 1 1/4. That's what I like. And this other one has to be in the middle. So I'm going to make it 1/16 beyond 3/4. So that's about here, because this is my 3/4 mark. Here is my 7/8. So halfway between them will make it halfway between here and here. So that's how I place my buttons. And then for my thread, I just make an old-fashioned quilter's knot. I'm using the natural, and I have the 2 strands. I put the ends onto the needle, hold them with my finger. I lost one. Okay. I hold it, and then I wrap the thread around the needle twice. Pinch it and hold it, and now pull the needle. And you've got this tiny little knot. And then I just cut off some excess. And then what I want to do now is I go through and I pierce my spot for each one of these buttons on the edge that will be the inside. So now I can see on the back side where to put my needle. And I just go through each button 3 times. Now I'm going to come to the next button. I'm not tying it yet, and my hole is so little I can't see it. Okay, that's the 3rd stitch. So now I'm going to come down to the bottom one, So I've got them all sewed on. Now I want to come to the back and just grab a stitch inside that canvas, not just the threads. I want it in the actual canvas, but don't go through to the paper. And I just do that like 3 times is good. And now I'm going to bring my needle up to underneath that middle button, so I have the thread up at in the middle, and just snip it off. And now I'm going to take my Fabri-Tac or 3-in-1, and you're going to put a glue on each one of those, and that's going to help hold it. Now if you want to take another look, is there any trimming or anything that you need to do, because we're gluing it on to the tapestry fabric next. And I want this one trimmed just a tad more. I like it to be relatively uniform all the way around. Make it pleasing to the eye. Now we're going to apply glue to the edges of the canvas, not the loose frayed edges. Leave that ravel alone. We don't want any glue on that ravel. And which one do I want for my front and for my back? I'm going with this one. And I kind of want to place it near the top. I want to make sure that the buttons are up high. The closure is going to be in the middle, so it won't interfere with my buttons. And then I just kind of try to center it between the two and press it down. And this one I'll do later. Put that aside so it's not in the way. We want that to dry. And then typically what I do next is I go ahead and get the signature ready and together, but let me go ahead and show you how I do the closure, because we can get that ready now because that's in the back. So it's 6 inches, so my middle is going to be 3 inches. And I need to poke a hole, not too close to the edge because I don't want the eyelet to come away. But I'm using a black Sharpie so that I can see it in my Crop-A-Dile. Otherwise, I don't recommend using that black Sharpie on your fabric. But for video purposes, so that I can see it. Okay, then go ahead and punch. I'm using a big eyelet, so I'm using the 3/16 hole. And then I want to clip any threads that didn't cut. Now we want to choose an eyelet that will coordinate with our fabric. I'm going to go with this gunmetal. It's like a steel, almost a black. Go ahead and place that in. I have a thread caught. Okay, it's loose now, but I need to trim that thread so it doesn't get hung up and mess up my eyelet. Okay, it's good and it's clear. So let's go ahead and set that. And it's good. Okay. I want to use a really big ring, jump ring, for my first hook. So I'm just going to go ahead and open that up. And this is a heavy duty. I believe it's 10 millimeters. And thread that through. That okay. And then close it up. So now it's nice and tight. It's all lined up. Let's get I use some elastic cord. This is 2 millimeter by Doris. I got it on Amazon. It comes in this great big spool. And to measure the amount I need, I just place it on the little book. It's not stretched, it's just wrapped. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut. So that much. And the width of your book will determine how wide you want yours. And now we need a little ribbon crimp. And ribbon crimps look like this. They've got those teeth on them. So what I want to do is put my ends together, place it into the crimp, hold it all, Oh, I want a different plier. I like using the ones with the nylon on them when I'm going to work on the metal. And then I'm making sure that my teeth, my elastic, has in between all the teeth. And I'm losing my crimp. And then go ahead and tighten. Close it down. And I always test it first to see if I messed up or if it's okay, if it's good. Now I need another jump ring. And I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Thread that through. Thread it through this ring. And then close it up. When you do 30 of them, you do have to use pliers in both hands because your hands get really sore. But for one, I'm good. But see, now we have a closure. And it is a good idea when I've got decoration on there that instead of going up, to go ahead and go down. That is the best. But we need a little charm on here too. So let's grab a charm and another eyelet. I called it an eyelet, didn't I? I mean jump ring, I'm sorry. And then I just threaded it around my elastic. And close it up. So that is what our book's going to look like. Now for our little journal. That's next. And I keep doing this while I'm handling it to make sure that that the glue is going to stay down and stay tacky. I want to measure my book as a double check, and I'm measuring from the zigzag to the zigzag. I've got 5 5/8 between, so I want my book pages to be no larger than 5 5/8. And then for the width, I fold it up, and I want my width about 4 1/8. No wider than that, because I don't want it to stick out and get frayed. And then here we have room to put our library pocket. And I've got some somewhere. This is a tea-dyed one, but see, it's going to fit in. It's not interfering with the eyelet. And then our little corner pocket will go here. But we're not going to worry about that now. Let's get our pages. So I've just got some avocado dyed. I cut it in half at the 5.5, and some coffee dyed papers at the 5.5. And I'm going to go ahead and just fold them all in half. I have to measure this way yet, but and then I've got some random pages. This is a while you were away type, the yellow copy. The white copy of it was perforated, so I don't want to use that because it's going to go in my seam. So I'm using the yellow copy. And it adds interest. So fold that in half. And I've got some music paper. And half of a ledger sheet. Some grid paper or graph paper. So I've got a mixture of new paper, vintage paper, and coffee dyed paper. Here's a little piece of stationery. And another little notebook. And this is the bottom half of a stenographer's notebook. And here's a page from a 1980s diary for April. So let's just go ahead and fold that in half. Okay, and here I have a piece from a coloring book, and I just cut it into a square. So I'm going to grab my envelope punch board. And I'm going to use this one for my measure. I used, looks like 3 3/8. Yes. So what I'm going to do here is, no, I don't think that's right. What is, five 7/8. 2 5/8. Let's use, let's use 2 3/8. 2 3/8. I tend to make up my own rules when it comes to making envelopes. Just kind of experiment and see what happens. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, oh well. And then let's go ahead and fold in our tabs. That's going to work just fine. I'm going to go ahead and round off the corner. Okay, so we have our envelope. We need an anchor page to use a little piece of cardstock for that. And I've been gutting away at this paper stack, this Once Upon a Time by Die Cuts with a View. This is the paper stack that I've been using for the little cover sheets. And they've got some pretty designs in here. Some will work very well, and some not so much. But I think this will blend with my cover quite nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and measure down 5 5/8 and cut this off. And then I need to determine if I want this or this with my picture. I'm going to go with that side. I don't want these pretty green flowers to compete with my iris. So I double checking my measurement, 4 1/8. So I'm going to get my scoreboard out and measure or score at 4 1/8. And fold that, burnish it, and now I need to trim this off. So now I have a scrap for something else. But this is going to be my anchor. And that's going to work in there quite nicely. So now my other sheets need to fit in here. So I do need to trim those off because they're still too long. But so I'm going to go ahead and trim a couple of them off it. And then we just have just randomly place our sheets in here. And what I like to do is offset them. One up, one down, because I'm just using cutoffs. I'm destashing, using what I have. Make sure my music's not upside down. Okay, this is one that didn't get trimmed yet. So let's hold this in place with my third hand there. Let's put that little thing in there too. And for this one, I think I want to center it to the best that I can. And that one. Put some clips in place. So it holds it. And now I'm going to take a look to make sure if I need to move anything around, because now is the time to move it. And the placement of your papers is totally personal. It doesn't matter. I find that if I just grab them and not think about it too much, it's best. Otherwise, it takes all day to figure out where you want what. And then I'm just making sure that everything is flush. Nothing's hanging over. And do I have my little... There's a template that I made for the others. and I just measured 7/8 from the top and 7/8 from the bottom, and then just have a hole in the middle, and then I mark the top. And centering my envelope, and then grab that clip in. And go ahead and punch holes. And remove that. I need this for this, my top. Centering it between the edge of the top and the bottom, and go ahead and punch. And for this size, I'm using a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, and I'm going to use 2.5 times the length for my waxed cording. And I like to use waxed. It likes to stick to itself, so it's more secure. So go ahead and aim for the middle, making sure that I'm right side up. And I think that's the hole, but just to make sure. Yep. I'm pulling it kind of taut, but not hard, because I don't want the string to come out of the middle. And I'm pulling my strings, and this one I'm going to hold it down towards the bottom so that I don't pierce it when I come through. Okay, I lost my stitch. Oops, I'm going to lose my thread. Here we go. There, I can get it through, but it wants to get caught up on that thread. Okay, I got it loose from the thread. We're good. If you should happen to pierce that thread, it won't tie tight. So now I want to pull, make sure it's good and taut, and it's good to go, and tie it in a double knot. Cut my threads, get rid of my clips, the art glitter glue, and glue it closed. And I'm double checked to make sure I'm not going to glue the envelope shut, that I didn't run the glue up too far on that little point. And then I was using these little paper clips. Whoop, they're all falling out, to close it up. And then what I like to do is just go through every couple of pages and give them a little hand press so that they open up and they stay nice. It leads to a nicer finish in the end product. Get that put away so I don't stab myself. And then now all I need to do is put the little saying here, the quote, and I like to mount it on some cardstock and zigzag stitch it, and I'm going to glue it on two sides and then place my library pocket back here and stuff it full of ephemera, put a library card in the pocket, and it is good to go. So I hope that helped. I hope you had fun. That's the most important part. And thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating.